Hello everyone and welcome to Pavement Matters. This is the Pavement podcast hosted by Pavement Management Services and myself, Lachlan McLean. Today on the program we're going to be discussing quick fixes and shortcuts in pavement management. What are they? Why would you do them? And what risks do you run when you choose to go with them? You may notice this is our first podcast in a while. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back and in full force. And if you're watching on the right platform, we're also in video today. So sit down, relax, grab some popcorn if you're watching us on video, and enjoy. So today we're with our senior pavement engineer at Pavement Management Services, Firas Noun. And yeah, that's all right. Well, I mean, you're probably the best person we could have had. Yeah, back again after 18 months or something. Yeah. If you've been tuning in for a while, he was in our very first podcast. But we're going to be talking about something a bit different today. It's quick fixes and shortcuts. A lot of organizations are choosing to go with these quick fixes and shortcuts, and it's a little bit concerning. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, look, the whole notion of a lot of organizations using quick fixes, I think that's a bit perceived in the wrong way by the public and by a lot of people in the industry, to be frank. I think it comes down to what do we define as quick fixes and how do they look like they're quick and what are the outcomes of these fixes?
Because a lot of people are going to see these as quick fixes if they're not in the know, but really there's a lot of thought that's put into it.
Yeah. So the main thing that you might perceive as a quick fix is, you're driving around your local council road or, any sort of road around your area, and you see a lot of these sealants and they've been put over all these crackings, and you're like, oh, that looks like a bit of a dodgy way to fix these cracks. Why don't they just, cut the pavement off and just resurface it or do something along that line? And interestingly enough, those sealants on those cracks, they're done for a reason, and that reason is we're trying to catch the problem early on in the pavement's life cycle. Because the longer they stay, obviously the longer they deteriorate and they turn into much bigger problems that aren't going to be really easy fixes and going to cost a lot of money. And so those sort of treatments that we see as quick fixes, they're honestly just more of like preventative treatments and something that really goes a long way.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I suppose there's always a thing it's a very, very common in the local vernacular of people complaining about potholes. And I know regular patching is a very, very big part of local asset management, but wouldn't you want to fix the road up before the potholes develop?
Yeah, exactly. Look, with a lot of councils around Australia, like they're dealing with an aging network, so those patchings, I think they are appropriate for like a lot of the instances. They're just trying to play catch up. But yeah, those sealants of those, or those minor treatments of those crackings early on, they're done so they don't turn into potholes. They don't cost the taxpayer. They don't cost the asset owner, X amount of times more than they should if they caught them early on. And that's what I think those fixes are. They're definitely within a sort of budget constraint. So there's as much as the council can do or any asset owner can do within that budget. But yeah, they're catching them early on definitely, fixes that problem.
There is a little bit of a catch-up game that's being played, and it's unfortunate, but there's not really any other way around it. The pavements that were originally put on these networks were not designed to last this long, but they have to. There's no choice. And I know a lot of, especially rural councils, a lot of rural councils have a lot of bridges. These days, building a bridge is a massive undertaking. But there's still rural councils that have 30, 40 little minor bridges that they've got to look after. And that's a real big problem for all of them.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. And then they're not really quick fixes. It's just things that are having to be done in order to get the network functioning even as good as it is.
Don't get me wrong, there are quick fixes out there. There are, certain organizations or certain asset owners that might not have the technical know-how on how to deal with their asset, and they might employ treatments that are quick fixes, and are done incorrectly, and that's what I think the perception should be focused towards. And how do we change the way the asset owner deals with the treatment types and how they, engage their assets?
Well, in case that's you, you better pay attention to this podcast, because we're going to be discussing all of the risks and the troubles that you may run into if you do choose to go with quick fixes. So I think it's time we break down some of the real world consequences of these quick fixes, as we said. And one of those is more on the technical nature, sort of on the engineering standpoint. Do you care to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. Look, if you're doing temporary fixes from a technical standpoint, you're going to be at a loss. So we'll give a few examples. You got lots of potholes on your network. You look at it, okay, let's patch it up. Yes, that fixes the end user comfort, the rideability, that sort of thing, but only in the short term. In the long term, that patch is gonna, water's gonna get under there. It's gonna make the pavement under there, soften it up, and just make it a much more weaker pavement. And you're really just gonna be back at square one, trying to put another patch in again just to cover that pothole, and it's gonna get worse over time, and it's just really not a good solution.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the reason why these quick fixes are being employed is because it can be very expensive to think proactively and to do your works programming far enough in the future that you don't run into this issue. And I think a lot of organizations are finding that they're spending so much time doing these minor term fixes just to make sure that people, don't get in trouble or don't damage their vehicles, or there's no safety concerns or anything like that. And they don't have a choice. They can't really pay attention to that big picture.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it leaves you in some sort of cycle where you're, like we said before, you're trying to play catch up. You're trying to do these temporary fixes, get these temporary solutions of rideability and all that stuff, and you can't really, get your budget towards the preemptive stuff. And that's where it comes into, the economical aspect of it. It's like you're spending all this money on these temporary short fixes, and you're not allocating enough budget to the preemptive solutions. So earlier on in the road cycle, if you target those minor defects with preemptive treatments, you're not going to get to those potholes. Because
and you mentioned a cycle as well. So there is sort of a vicious negative cycle with the repeating the quick fixes, but there's also a good cycle as well, which is the pavement life cycle. Well, it is good depending on whereabouts on the pavement life cycle most of your assets are. Because if you're towards the very, very top, those repairs are actually quite cost effective, and they're going to last a lot longer. It's only when you move further down when things get a little bit tricky, and I think that's one a lot of organizations are finding themselves in.
And that's where you got to have some experts and the technical know-how how to allocate your budget in the most efficient and effective way. And I think we'll probably talk about that a bit later on in this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. But another thing, and these probably don't fall by the wayside. It's probably pretty obvious as well. But I guess when you're really caught up in the technical side of things as an engineer, you might forget that there are real people using these roads. There's safety risks. And if someone falls off, it could be something as simple as skid resistance. We're finding skid resistance is getting a lot more attention these days, and texture depth as well because of aquaplaning and aging surfaces as well. And it could be perhaps a little bit macabre to think of it this way, but if someone does hurt themselves in your network, it could lead to negative legal or financial aspects as well, which of course we don't like to think about, but it's nonetheless quite
it's
true.
The reality of what happens on the networks. And like you said, all these different factors of the condition of the road, it's something you really got to pay attention to, and can lead to safety and legal consequences. And even just user comfortability. You want your the people driving around, they don't want to be going on bumpy roads and just thinking about how this is going to affect my vehicle. How's this, this doesn't seem safe to me. And it's an important area that, this cycle and really getting the treatments early on in this cycle does prevent us even thinking about that.
And if you're a councillor, you want to get elected again.
Vote for Lachlan in your next.
Perhaps one day. I certainly know how to talk quite well, don't I? Or a lot, rather. So with all of these risks and all these things you have to consider, that sort of long-term commitment to your pavement network is actually more of an essential thing. So with all of these risks surrounding quick fixes, it's actually more of an essential component to have a long-term pavement strategy. But as we've already touched upon, it's often a little easier said than done. So we're going to move into now, what is the best practice? If you're not doing quick fixes, what should you be doing? I think the first part is to hire someone who actually knows what to do, I suppose.
Is qualified in the field and really has that background and knows all about the asset, knows how they deteriorate, knows what they need, the treatment types, knows the back to front. You know how the palm of your hand? Is that a saying?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, the back of your hand.
Oh, the back.
I guess palm works as well.
Because I know my palm very well, so
I'm not a very good drawer, so I don't know if I could prove it, but I know mine very well as well.
Yes,
but of course, if you aren't an expert, there's no reason why you can't become one. Especially in today's day and age, it's very easy to go out there, learn some new skills, develop some new things. While the Roman road is a very, very old concept that is still in practice today, I'm actually been personally surprised with a lot of the technical advances that this field has really been experiencing in the last 15, 20 years. And some of those expanses are simple as a different school of thought, a change of thinking. And sort of pivoting from that, a lot of these advances are going into new and improved materials. So how important are materials when you're doing road asset management?
Look, definitely materials play, I think, a pivotal role in because good in, good out. Good material in, good material out. But let's take that a step back. It's like the materials, we lay them down, it's how we actually lay them, how are we doing the construction, where are the quality checks, the skilled labourers, having a very tight and controlled environment when you're actually applying the material. I think that comes prior to the actual material quality itself, to be honest. So if you've got good construction quality, you're generally going to have a good construction output.
That's good. That's great. So just how do we budget and plan for these works? If we're not doing quick fixes, how do we prepare ourselves to do something more long term? Like what actually happens?
Ooh, a lot happens.
Oh gosh,
a lot happens.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, so look, we'll kind of split it up into a few sections. So you have a budget. You want to take a step back, see where that budget's coming from, what's it allocated to within your organisation. How are you allowed to use that budget on your network? Do you have to rationalise it throughout different departments or different sort of assets? So you got to understand what your budget is and how you can use it. So if you have a firm understanding of your budget, you can confidently allocate a certain amount of budget to a certain amount of assets. So from there, you'd want to really understand your asset itself, the attributes of your assets. So your road, you want to know exactly when you constructed it, how old it is, what are the materials that are on there. You want to know the current pavement condition, so the current defects, the current crackings, the textures, the roughness. All those current conditions are going to play a very pivotal role. And you want to really, sort of mold a treatment plan. Understand your abilities, your contractors, understand what you are feasible, what's feasible to actually treat, and really nail that down. So you got your budget, you got your treatments. That's when you want to hand it over to a professional like yourself.
Yes.
And they can really tailor what we call a works program. So it's something that lays out the next 5 or 10 years and it shows you how your pavement is deteriorating and what's the most optimal way of actually targeting those treatments for that deteriorated pavement.
So really, it's critical that your predictions for the future are as accurate as possible, and modeling is a big part of that. So there's lots of fantastic, amazing softwares out there that do modeling very, very well. But at the end of the day, every network is different. There could be one network that's in massive growth, lots of construction traffic that could have an impact, more heavy vehicles on the network. You could live in a little microclimate that gets 50% more rain than the local government area next to you, or the one to the south of you, north, or whatever it is. And those are the things that these asset management softwares initially struggle to keep track of. So you want to keep your condition data, your like actual condition surveys up to date, and use that to inform your models. Because after you do that sort of annually or biannually or biennially, I think it is, if it's once every 2 years. There's a difference. Because otherwise biannually and biannually mean the same thing. Anyway, no, that's not important. But after you do it for 5 or so years, we found, like from our experience, that works programs can get very, very accurate. Even 5 years or plus in the future.
Because we get a feel of how the network's actually working in the real life, especially like Lachlan's saying, with our yearly surveys, we're getting this massive amount of data sets. We can link it back to our ARAN surveys that we do, which are visual and laser inspections of the network, as well as FWD. We can get the deflection and the curvature and really input all those conditions into the works program and get a very, very accurate forward works program.
Nice. So we talked about the pavement life cycle. We touched upon it earlier, but I feel like there's a little bit more sort of waiting in there. So how does the forward works program actually sort of match the pavement life cycle?
So the pavement life cycle, like we said, your roads are going to deteriorate no matter what. That's just the nature of roads. Early on, they'll start deteriorating at a slower pace. But the more those defects get into, the grunt of it, they just start to fall apart quickly. So you start getting, minor defects that will exponentially deteriorate the longer you get through the pavement's life cycle. So you're really at an advantage when you're acting earlier on in the cycle. And that ties into the works program, because we get those treatments and we do optimization, which means we try to target preventative treatments earlier on in the works program. And while also it's a very fine-tuning process, but we also try to keep a bit of that budget towards the the more serious defects that still need to be treated. So it's just that fine balance of keeping preemptive treatments and those more major treatments as well.
So you may find yourself at first probably doing more treatments at the beginning with a preventative maintenance strategy, but what you'll find is that those treatments last longer and are more effective.
So you're going to save on cost, definitely. So those preemptive treatments are probably going to be, like you said, higher in number, but down the line you're paying X times the amount less than you were if you just left that and treated it later on.
And then that allows you to free up some budget, 3 or 4 years, and get to those areas that are causing you a lot of trouble and you are having to do those quick fixes on. So unlocking that budget is really the first step to sort of breaking yourself out of that really terrible cycle that a lot of people find themselves in. So I think that's pretty much all we have to say on that. I mean, obviously that's just tipping. Well, it's just the tip of the iceberg for that. But we value your time very much. So what have we learned? We've learned that while quick fixes may be good to get you out of a bind, they're not really going to improve your network long term. And they're going to bring a lot of unwanted risks and attention to your network that you don't really want. Things like bad press. You could potentially have some injuries on your network, but also more towards a technical and economic impact is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy essentially. Continuing to do quick fixes will just make it all the more likely you're going to keep going in the future. But it's not all bleak. You can do things about it. You need to adopt a preventative maintenance regime, I suppose, is really the crux of it. Pay attention to your pavement life cycle. Keep those pavements in the green for as long as you can, and that's going to help you free up some funds in the future to get those troublesome areas into a good bill of health.
Fingers crossed you get more budget.
And that's always good too. Anyway, thanks very much everyone for tuning in. I know it's been a little while, but I hope you've not missed us too much. And don't fret, because we're not going anywhere. So don't forget to tune in on Spotify for the next one and catch up on all the other ones if you haven't seen them as well. So I hope you enjoyed yourselves today. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. We've got a lot of episodes out by now, so you can also catch up on those, but don't forget to follow us for the future. And in case you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe. Alrighty, see you next time.